On April 4th, the Cajun Libertarian held a debate, and I was concerned with what Angela McCardle said in the last 20 minutes of it. This is my interpretation of her direct quotes, and I want to be completely transparent and not accused of misinterpreting, so I am playing the entirety of the questions asked as well as the entirety of her responses starting at around the 1 hour 36-minute mark. I'll be interjecting along the way. Also, here's a disclaimer. This is only a critique of her based on her answers to questions asked during these 20 minutes. This is not discrediting any of her accomplishments, nor is any of this directed towards the Mises Caucus. Here we go with the Cajun Libertarian asking the opening question.
And I'll ask each one of you individually, what your plan is to heal some of this fracture that's going on, because, and I'm gonna rant for a little bit, but we'll clean this up as we get through the questions with each other. What I see a lot of is people that are just so focused. They got this tunnel vision on these labels and whatnot. They're anti-caucus, they're pro-caucus, they're this, they're that. How do you intend to pull people and unite people together to where, even if it's just, hey, look, we got to get this one thing done. Let's all calm down. Let's get our act together and let's make some stuff happen. I mean, obviously, I'm speaking widely to just being able to unify people, but we need a more specific pathway into that. And so what we have to look at is, how are they thinking? Why are they feeling this way? And how can you, as the chair and representing the LNC as a whole, how do y'all plan to create a pathway forward into developing communication specifically that will help heal the fracture that we have in this party that it could just kill us completely? We'll start with you, Angela.
Okay, this is something I'm very passionate about. So it was, how do you intend to pull people together and unite people? And then there was a second half of the question. Can I get that
Correct.
again?
Yep. How do you plan on being able to get people to communicate with each other and to heal the fracture and divide? And then also, most people see the Reno convention in May as a shit show. Why do you think they feel this way? And how do we plan on changing their minds?
Okay, because 2020 was a shit show. We wasted an entire day arguing about credentialing. So people are anticipating that it's going to be the same thing. We're just going to have a different fight this year, which is over which states are the rightful affiliates. So my advice is to spend less time arguing on the microphone. It's not your soapbox. If somebody's already repeated essentially what you think, you don't have to get up there and reiterate it 10 more times. That's going to help with the shit show element. How do I intend to pull people together and unite people? Something that I feel very strongly about is effective leadership, and that's not something that anybody talks about. And it's very frustrating because we desperately need it in the LP. And there are a lot of different types of leadership, and you use them depending on the different types of people you're working with and the different types of situations. Directive leadership, supportive leadership style, participative or collaborative leadership, and achievement-focused leadership. There's probably too much for me to go into right now, but understanding what type of leadership style to use, depending on what project you're working on, what you're trying to accomplish, and who you're working with, is very important. And generally, the way that you navigate that is that by different people's need for affiliation and camaraderie, some people's preference for structure and orderliness, whether someone has an internal or external locus of control, and someone's self-perceived level of taskability. Now, it may not sound like this is related to infighting, but I believe that it is, because we need to shift our attention on our alliances and start shifting that towards finishing the work. And once we actually become like achievement and progress and project oriented, you're going to start to see some of the fighting shift from petty infighting to fighting over who is more qualified.
She called for getting away from alliances and focusing on the problems at hand that the party faces. That sounds like something I can get behind, and I agree that'll solve a lot of the infighting that's going on right now.
And those sort of fights are less nasty and they're less personal. And so that's something that I'm going to be doing, is focusing attention on that, while also being very mindful of how I interact with the LNC and the members at large, depending on what their immediate needs are. If they have trust issues, if they're a little bit aggro and defensive, if they feel sort of out of control, if they're underachievers or if they're overachievers. I hope that answers your question.
No, you actually touched on some really good things. So I'm going to follow up with that. Actually, I love how you laid that out. Here's on a superficial level, the first problem, the first red flag, that it's not a red flag, but the first issue I see you running into is if you have this great plan and it sounds good hypothetically, but how can you recruit everyone? Because it's going to take the entire Libertarian Party from you down to the LNC, down to the delegates. It has to have a trickle down effect. So we need to recruit everybody into this format and plan that you have. And so the leaders that are up under you, they're the ones that you're going to have to convince, and they're going to have to convince the people under them. So how is that possible?
Oh, so one of the ways that you do that is by working through change management. And there are different phases of change that you have to really articulate and explain to people. So change management is the process of moving an organization from its current state to a desired future state. And when you get pushback from different people, it kind of mimics different stages of grief. So like shock, denial, frustration, depression, bargaining, a final decision, and integration. And so what you have to do is be able to navigate some of those changes, all of those changes really, with everyone. And part of how I've done that is by getting as much buy-in from as many members of the party as possible. So the low-hanging fruit, right, is people in the Mises caucus.
She used the term buy-in, which I'll get to later. But the first red flag for me was when she said the low-hanging fruit is the people in the Mises caucus, as an answer to a follow-up on how she will unify the party. Seconds ago, she said we need to lose alliances, but she's starting the process of unification from her alliance. And she's about to go on to group everybody in categories directly related to her alliance.
But then you have to move on to people who are like friendly and allies, and explain what you're interested in doing and get them on board. And then you move on to people who are neutral. And then you move on to people who are skeptics. And then if you're really on a roll, you move on to recalcitrant haters. You don't know until you try. And so that's what I have been doing, and it's what I'll continue to do.
So the categories and the strategies she will continue to use are Mises allies, neutral skeptics, and recalcitrant haters. She views everyone in their relation to her alliance, and that directly conflicts with her theory that we should shift from alliances. Look, I'll be honest, I'm a dummy, and I didn't know what the word recalcitrant meant, so I looked it up. Recalcitrant. Adjective, having an uncooperative attitude towards authority. Being that she placed recalcitrant hater on the opposite end of the spectrum from Mises, she sees that caucus as the authority that the haters hate. And all of this in response to a question on how to get the entire party unified. She outlined the 5 degrees of separation from Mises with no other caucuses or platforms or issues mentioned. You either fall in line with their caucus or you are on the outside. As far as the word recalcitrant, as libertarians, we should all be recalcitrant to some degree. Liberty, if not completely, is pretty damn close to being antithetical to authority.
And when I teach these skills to other people on the LNC, they can go out and do the same thing. So then instead of being combative and looking like you're trying to ram your way through, what you're really doing is bringing people on board and empowering them and telling them, hey, I need your help. I need your input. And that's how you get buy-in, and that's how you get cultural cohesion within a nationwide organization. And while this might all seem overwhelming and scary, trust me, it's not, because there are giant corporations and other political parties and nonprofits that do this all the time, and they're successful. And I think that we've got the best and the brightest within the LP. So if they can do it, we can do it too.
Excellent. Thank you, Angela.
This is the second time she's used the term buy-in, and she said she will get people on board. And I'd just like to point out that's not how you unify, that's how you convert. Anyway, Steve Dasbasch is about to give his perspective on that.
Well, they see that there's conflict going on. They expect it to be reflected in Reno, and I'm sure there'll be some of it there. There have been conflicted conventions all throughout our history, so this is nothing new. It won't be as bad as people. It won't. The shit show aspect of it is not going to be as bad as people think. As far as minimizing it, basically just take. You need it to say your piece, take the votes, and move on. Spending another hour discussing the same things you've already beaten to death is not going to change the outcomes. So everybody say their piece, take a vote, move on. You get through the decisions that have to be made, whether you like the outcomes or not. I really have to disagree with the approach that Angela talked in terms of trying to eliminate infighting, because it was basically built around starting with the assumption that my group is correct, and then we'll gradually get people to buy into my view. And that shows a lack of respect for people who may in fact be completely opposed to you. And you have to reach out and listen to those people, and maybe they have something to offer. And so you need a diverse committee, not one that is all aligned together, shutting out a large chunk of the party. And you need to listen. Everybody needs to respect each other and listen to each other. When I served as chair, our committee was split roughly equally between radicals and pragmatists. But we all wanted the party to succeed. We all wanted the party to be professional. We just had to listen to each other in terms of making sure that the messaging and the things we were doing were in the overlap area that people could agree on. And that really involves not thinking that I've got the best way and everybody else needs to come to what I'm doing, but rather, how do we find common ground for the party as a whole, that the party as a whole can unite behind, and not assuming that any one of us has all the answers, because we don't.
Steve called her out, saying the Libertarian leadership needs to be a diverse board of views rather than some monolithic ideology.
Yep. All right. Angela's got a rebuttal to that, so we'll bring her on.
Okay, so I take offense to that. I'm not showing anyone a lack of respect.
Being otherized and dubbed a recalcitrant hater is apparently not a lack of respect.
What I'm showing is effective leadership. And it's something that we don't experience in this party very often, unfortunately, because we tend to conflate leadership with authoritarianism. And that's unfortunate, but it's not true.
We don't need to philosophize the party's views on authoritarianism when, by her own words and the use of the word recalcitrant, she sees Mises as the authority.
And that's why we often spin our wheels. Getting people's buy-in and explaining the stages of change management also includes active listening to people and having them collaborate.
This is the third time she's used the term buy-in. She's talked about getting people on board. No listening or collaboration is involved with that. Those terms refer to a plan or a theory or a philosophy that already exists. You're just trying to convince people and convert them. Let's say Bob and Jim are having a conversation. Bob is trying to get Jim to buy into an idea. All that means is Bob's only goal is to try to convince Jim that the idea is worth supporting. Jim has the option to get on board with the idea or go be a recalcitrant hater somewhere. There is no listening or collaboration on Bob's end. I feel like her repeated use of buy-in and on board directly conflicts with listening and collaborate. Either she has no idea what these terms mean when she uses them, or she does and makes no attempt to conceal her intentions.
And one of the things that I've been very clear about is that when we get in after Reno and we're all seated on a board, what we're going to be doing is working together. So it's not going to be me barking orders at people. It will be a collaborative process. But ultimately, I'm in the driver's seat, and I have to make sure that that happens.
It's going to be a collaborative process where she is in the driver's seat and you buy into the plans that she comes up with.
The way that I do that is by facilitating dialogue and conversations and steering us in the right direction, not being a jerk on the board.
She is in the driver's seat steering the conversation, and if you stick to her approved conversation topics, she won't be a jerk.
Thank you, Angela. Steve, did you have a rebuttal? I'm going to give each of y'all another couple.
Just real quick, I think, for example, it starts with things as simple as committee structures. Committees. When you're building a committee, you don't just put the people that agree with you on that committee. You need to have people that reflect diverse views when you put on that committee. And then you're more likely to get something that the group can go behind. As for leadership styles, well, I talked earlier about the growth in membership, the growth in fundraising, the growth in media. So I think I've proven that type of leadership style works. So I think I'll end it there.
Good work. And we're closing out here. We only got a couple of questions left, and I want to get to Tony, but I'm going to allow both of y'all to stew on that. And if you want to come back with a response to each other again after Tony's, feel free. We got time. Tony.
Tony didn't really engage with the other candidates during this segment other than one statement in which he tried to remind libertarians that we are the party of individuals. I think that was the closest he came towards a jab at Angela.
Yeah, I have a couple of points to make that I think are really interesting. We've had diverse views on the current LNC, and while maybe it's the exception, not the rule, it's been a disaster.
Angela just said diversity has been a disaster. All right, I'm listening. Let's see where this goes.
We've had a huge chunk of the LNC quit or attempt to quit, rage quit and walk out of meetings, lots of crying and tears over the last year, and it's been really ugly.
So diversity is bad because it makes people cry.
And I don't think that everybody involved on the LNC and not everybody involved in committee work and so on and so forth needs to be all members of the same caucus. But we do need to be more closely ideologically aligned.
She's going to listen and collaborate with you if you are closely ideologically aligned.
Because we've been having really bad breakdowns over the direction of the party. For example, we didn't have strong messaging on lockdowns because people weren't in agreement, because we had such a wide, diverse range of opinions. And that's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate to have a different opinion.
But that's something that I'm going to be working to change.
She's working to change diverse viewpoints and different opinions in order to promote a more consistent ideology. I am sure this will end well.
And while it doesn't mean that I'm going to literally only nominate Mises Caucus people to the board, there are already people that I've endorsed who are not even members of the caucus. It does mean that I think that we need to be somewhat in alignment on our vision and our goals. And I think that's very important to note.
As I pointed out earlier, anyone she has on the board is irrelevant. She has made up her mind and she is going to do what she is going to do.
Excellent. Did anybody have anything to say? Because my next question is something that exactly falls in line with what she just said. Angela, you're up. Does the caucus play a role in the LNC and more specifically the chair?
I'm trying to think how, does the caucus play a role? Can you give me a little bit more on that? Because I want to give you the best answer possible.
So I snatched this question out of the comment section, and they're
Okay.
so deep. I wish I could have.
Okay.
The last two questions
Sure.
are actually from the comment section, but I'm not sure who said it. But I would say what they probably mean, and I'm assuming is, does a caucus have a role in influencing how the LNC should operate or how the chair should operate in making certain decisions? That's kind of what I'm extrapolating from that.
Got it. So decisions are going to be made by the people in the LNC, not by the Mises Caucus. There's no one behind me pulling
Right.
strings like a marionette.
I believe her. Based on what she says, I don't think she sees anyone above herself to pull the strings.
I will say that I will be resigning all of my positions in the Mises Caucus once I'm elected. Legally, I have to do that anyway. So that means that I'll no longer be on the National Mises Caucus board. I won't be on the PAC board. I won't be chairing the California Mises Caucus because we have our own state level PAC for candidates and whatnot. I won't be the California organizer. I'm not getting rid of my affiliation because that would be disingenuous. And I want to be very transparent and out in the open that I'm in alignment with the Mises Caucus on our goals and our values and our issues.
I agree. She has been very transparent in these last 15 minutes of debate.
But that doesn't mean that every person that I put on the board is going to be in the Mises Caucus. That's not true.
Again, irrelevant.
In fact, I've endorsed some people for different positions who are not in the caucus right now, and I'm happy to work with them. By the same token, I'd also love to get Steve's help with fundraising and Tony's help maybe with IT or learning management systems. And when it comes to caucuses, really what we're trying to do is achieve a political outcome. And I believe in free association. And I think that that's really important. And by the same token, I respect anybody else who has the same feelings and works within a different caucus. And I welcome them to try to influence me with my decisions and try to achieve their own outcomes.
This was the reddest red flag of them all. Her direct quote towards people outside of Mises. I welcome them to try to influence me with my decisions and try to achieve their own outcomes. Think about what she just said. In response to whether she will be locked into her own caucus when she is chair, Angela offered the hypothetical scenario in which she will make a decision on a future issue that doesn't exist yet, and she already has a decision and sees any non-Mises perspective leading to an outcome different from her own.
It's politics, and that's just how it goes. The difference being that I want to be very above the table and open and transparent about it so that everybody knows, who brought this proposal, where did this idea come from, and so on and so forth. I hope that answers the question.
It's politics. That is just how it works. If she wins and her caucus proved a majority, either kiss the ring or you will be cast out. She is bringing party line ideology into libertarianism. That is what this run for chair is based on her own words. If she wins, her party wins. Every decision will be coming from her and her party. Her party is the authority she will start from. You are either in her party, friendly to her party, neutral to her party, skeptical of her party, or hate her party. She is in the driver's seat, steering conversation. Any diversity outside of her party is a disaster, and any opinion she doesn't agree with is unfortunate. But don't worry, she is working to change the fact that you dissent. Based on her own words, based on the fact that every response during this segment of debate was straight down caucus lines, based on the fact that she is very open and transparent about her feelings towards non-Mises opinions and diversity, I believe that Angela McCardle is an authoritarian. Now, before you get defensive and take those words personally and start going on about how you're Mises and you did this for the party and the party survived you, none of this is about anyone who is not named Angela McCardle. None of this is about the Mises Caucus. I feel that based on these words Angela McCardle said, Angela McCardle is an authoritarian. That is the limitation of my statement. I don't think Angela is a libertarian or even sees herself as one. Everything she just said makes me think she sees herself as Mises, and only Mises. Honestly, kinda new to the party. I voted Libertarian my entire adult life, but I've only became active in the state party in the last year. That said, I have no idea what Mises is. I have no idea what any caucuses are. All I know is that going into any situation locked into party ideology is incredibly dangerous and not something that the libertarians should be having to deal with. Again, this entire video was her direct quotes. I provided the entirety of questions asked with her problematic answers. I am not attacking her. I am not diminishing any of her accomplishments. Honestly, I liked her all the way up until these 20 minutes. I thought she had very reasonable goals and plans, but her use of the word recalcitrant, the terms on board, buy-in, seeing diversity as disastrous, seeing different opinions as unfortunate, and making it clear she wants a consistent ideology all make her an authoritarian. This is not projection. This is her own words. Anyway, I learned a lot that will impact my role as a delegate, and I really like this new word that she encouraged me to learn. Recalcitrant. I plan to do great things with this new word and maybe even start my own caucus. All are welcome.